This conference will now be recorded.
Yep. I'm off. Who else is on?
Come on.
Oh. No, it's the city of Muncie.
We don't want that.
Hello.
Yes, your audio.
Yep, sorry. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks.
Thank you, Zach. All right. I would like to call to order the Tuesday, May 16th meeting of the Monmouth City Council. And before we do the roll call, I do want to note that tonight's meeting is focused on Monmouth City Council business. The general public comment time scheduled for items not on the agenda will be limited to no more than 20 minutes tonight. And also note, the city is aware of the possible siting of a micro-sheltered transitional housing site for people experiencing homelessness at the Christ Church in Monmouth. Currently, there are no active land use or permitting applications under review to locate a micro-shelter housing site on the Christ Church property in Monmouth or anywhere else. Currently, Monmouth zoning code does not permit micro-shelter housing units in low-density residential zones. There are two ways any property owner, including but not limited to Christ Church, could ask for a consideration of a change to that. First, by asking the city council to initiate a zone code change. The request would come at a public meeting and council would deliberate the issue at the public meeting. If the council recommended consideration of a zone change, it would go through a public land use process with multiple steps and many opportunities for public comment. Two, under a law passed in 2021, local governments such as cities and counties are required to grant applications to site emergency housing shelters that meet specific criteria. If Monmouth receives a qualified application to site an emergency housing shelter proposal before the law sunsets July 1st, the city staff would review it to see if it meets the provisions of the law, which is based on House Bill 2006. If such a request is made, the city council is committed to create a forum for public input about the issue. But under the law, the city does not have much control over the decision, and it is not appealable to the Planning Commission or City Council. Again, currently, no such application is under consideration at tonight's meeting. We have nothing on the agenda regarding that. So we will take public comment from folks. We had one that was submitted in writing that I will have Marty read, and when we get to the public comment section, I will call on the others. But to start off, we have our city attorney here to do roll call while Phyllis Bowman enjoys an evening away.
All right, thank you. Roxanne Belts,
I'm here.
John Carey,
Here.
Christopher Lopez,
Present.
Carol McKeel,
Here.
John Oberst is excused, Rebecca Salinas Oliveros,
Here.
Cecilia Coons.
And I am present. Councilor Carey, will you lead us in flag salute?
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start off with the consent calendar. Tonight, we have two meetings to consider. Our meeting of April 4th and the brief meeting that we held on May 2nd. Those minutes were included in the packet. I will see if there are any corrections or additions or a motion to approve them as we receive them.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor McKeel for the motion and Councillor Salinas Oliveros for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councillor Belts online. That passes. So we now do intend to take some public comment. We do have some comment cards here. Each comment will be limited to 3 minutes. They all appear to be items which are not on the agenda, including or appear to be about the same topic. So first I'll have Marty read the comments that were submitted earlier online, and then I'll call up the folks in the room.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The council received a public comment email from Jada Rojas, who wanted the council to know that she is in support of the proposed managed microshelter in rural Polk County. Ms. Rojas relates that she was once a houseless teen in Polk County with little support and resources, and she struggled to make ends meet. She waited 2 years to receive housing and is now housed, employed, and a resource parent, and is a case manager supporting those who have experienced homelessness. She wanted the council to know that she believes there are lots of misconceptions about people experiencing homelessness, and she would urge people with those views to get out of their comfort zones and make a friend at a local shelter or food bank. Housing is a social determinant, and Ms. Rojas said that she believes the proposed microshelter would provide a safe place with wraparound services. And that was provided to the council.
All right. I will call up our first commenter. I'll set a 3-minute timer for each comment. And first, Aaron Dunmeyer. And please make sure you're speaking into the mic. So
Okay, I will do that.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Erin Dunmeyer. I live at 378 Walnut Drive South in Monmouth, and I have a gift for you. I hope you will find beneficial in the coming months as we as a community grapple with the problem of housing those in need. In my efforts during the last few years to study servant leadership, I have come across the book Toxic Charity. I believe it holds correct principles that, if followed, will allow our community a way to thrive, leading us to create a win-win for both the homeless and our neighborhoods. Robert Lupton, who wrote Toxic Charity, has said that for some reason, healthy people with hearts full of compassion forget fundamentals when it comes to building relationships with those they attempt to serve. Forging ahead to meet a need, we often ignore the basics: mutuality, reciprocity, and accountability. In doing so, relationships turn toxic. Over the past weeks, as Christ Church has pressed ahead, exploring the possibility of accommodating Polk County's homeless population on their vacant lot, those in the surrounding neighborhood have felt ignored, and there have definitely been a toxic undercurrent develop in the unneighborly relations within the surrounding area. There is a sense that there is no way to dialogue and problem solve, but that good Christians should be willing to help, no negotiations needed. I believe the people in surrounding neighborhoods are good, kind, and helpful people. I feel that the reaction to the preliminary plan is because it will bring 40 to 80 people to one consolidated lot. This will be unhealthy for the well-functioning and established neighborhoods for which it is being proposed. Robert Lupton has spent more than 34 years in inner-city Atlanta. As a Christian community developer, he used his entrepreneurial skills to bring together communities of resources with communities of need. He shares from his experience and says the large institutional model is essentially community unfriendly. A quick web search of recent lawsuits between neighborhood groups and institutions reveals the bitter animosity that institutional incursion stirs up. Small is beautiful, at least in neighborhoods. If it becomes incumbent upon this council to deliberate this proposal, please consider this idea. Small is beautiful, at least in neighborhoods. I believe that a variety of neighborhoods could help the local Monmouth people in need of housing in small groups. Small groups of 4 to 6 people are not going to change the face of an entire neighborhood, but rather it provides a safe, stable model for those trying to reclaim their lives to emulate. Robert Lepton admits that bigger is better when it comes to economies of scale. Costs go down when you deal in bulk. There are efficiencies to gain, but there are also trade-offs. Those trade-offs in this situation have names such as the Monmouth Independence Community Preschool, Cherry Lane Park, Western Oregon University, and all the neighboring families that would have potentially up to 80 struggling people in one location. There are successful models out there. Please check out the Other Side Academy and Delancey Street Foundation. I hope you will consider the principles contained in Toxic Charity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Julie Logow, your name and address, please, and 3 minutes for comments.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for an opportunity to have a brief moment to share. I think this is about 30 seconds, so that'll be pretty quick. And we do realize that this isn't before the city council now, but it could be, so we're kind of getting the jump on it a little bit here. So this is from my husband and me. We would like to see more homeless people find permanent housing, get jobs, and become productive members of society. We have financially supported organizations that help the homeless in the past. I'm skipping a little bit of what I had just to say that we've done various practical things to help the homeless, but we do not believe that next to Christ Church is the best place to locate these shelters. It is in a neighborhood with many children, and it is next to a preschool. The Boy Scouts use the church and have many activities in this field. We believe continued efforts should be made to find a more suitable location.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Nancy Marinelli.
Well, I wasn't planning to read my letter. I was going to turn it in. I'll just try to brief it up. There's concerns about the homeless micro shelter coming to the Methodist Church in Monmouth, the community in which
Nancy, can you make sure and speak in the mic a little bit?
into the mic.
You can pull it towards you.
Yeah,
if that would be
you can
easier.
move it so you-
Oh, okay. Anyway, there's concerns about the shelter coming to the Methodist Church, and it's a conflict with our neighborhood being right in the middle of it. Monmouth doesn't have a huge homeless population, and I think that they would end up filtering into Cherry Lane Park, Main Street Park, and the streets of Monmouth. Let's see, I'll try to sum this up. Since the church at the park started posting on Facebook, there has been more homeless I've seen in our community. The college students often run, and a lot of young ones, females. Today I saw 2 young boys at 7 a.m. in Cherry Lane Park playing. They were about 7 or 9 years old, I think, before their bus came. I've lived up on Ackerman Street for 35 years. There would be a big impact on the preschool that's at the church. And the grounds have been used by people playing baseball, the Boy Scouts, people throwing their ball for their dogs. I think that the homeless, once they have the shelter, they'll end up coming into our community, and the ones that don't succeed will be left here in our community. I think that since it's a county issue, it should be a county problem, and Polk County Fairgrounds would be a good place to locate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy.
All right, and we also have, written comments. We'll get copies of these for everybody, especially since Councilor Oberst isn't here tonight. And our last comment this evening, Chris wanted to talk to us about the sign code issue we just, I think, recently heard about. So.
I don't know if I need this, but. Good afternoon, or evening, I should say. My name's Chris Orn. I own and operate Summit Computers right here on the S-curves, prior to the S-curves. Last couple weeks, we've been getting what I call harassment of the city in regards to our sale signs that we have out. Sale signs in front of the shop, they go up at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they come down at 6 o'clock at night. They're up all day. I opened the store July 1st of 2014, and they've been flying there since 2014 with not one person complaining about anything. Then in the last couple weeks, I get a letter from this Susan stating that somebody had complained about the signs. And if you look at the letter that we got, the signs are about 5 feet into the grass area of my shop. I did move them back because I talked to the post office and the lady, because it was right by the mailbox, and I asked her if there was a problem. She says it's kind of close, so I moved them back 5 feet off into our grass, and they've been there since 2014. Once we got the sign, I said, you know what, let's see what we got here. So I myself went into the sign code here and looked up the sale signs, and I look at this thing, and I don't know, to my knowledge on reading this, the last time it was updated was in 2006, but it says nowhere in this sign code does it say that I can't fly sale signs on Main Street. Now, understanding that, it tells you everything of what you can do and can't do on Highway 99, but it doesn't say anything else about the sign code flying on Main Street. Now, the letter that I did get, they took a picture of it, put it on the back of it, and then they gave me a trifold that they sent me also. And on it, it says, whoever created it said you can only fly sale signs on 99W only. Okay, well, so I got into the code to look for that, and there's not that word only, or only in the city of Monmouth on Highway 99 or anything like that. So I don't quite understand why, according to this, I'm going to get a $500 fine for flying sale signs that I've been flying for, what, 9 years now, almost 10 years now. And according to the code that I'm reading here, unless, I don't know if I'm illiterate or something, but if you guys could look at the code and, take a look at it. It doesn't say anything about not flying sale signs anywhere else in the city. Now, it does say about neighborhoods, the height restrictions, and I'm well within everything on this. I just don't understand why I'm getting these letters. And this is my third one. And this is the second warning letter. And but the code enforcer guy came by the shop and told us about it as well. And I'm like, okay, well, when they show me I'll take them down when they show me when where and why I can't fly these things. So I just help, if you guys could, to review the sign code and tell me what am I doing wrong in regards to flying these things. And the reason I fly them is numerous times it's a home. This is a home that I'm in. And it's been a business since 1976. And numerous times we've had customers come in and ask if we're open because the signs weren't out. And like I said, they've been out since 2014. And I haven't had one iota of any problems with it. Now, Susan did stop by the other day, gave us a notification, and we asked her.
Chris, that's time. So I think
Okay.
we can leave it.
All right.
We will ask staff to review that. and get
Yeah.
back to us.
Okay. Not a problem.
I remember being on council when that was discussed.
Yeah.
So I know it's since 2007. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we will proceed with our business agenda for the evening. And our first item is, there's Janet, our Q3 financial report. So Janet Chenard, the not so much longer finance director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. So I bring to you tonight the third quarter financial report, which seems like it was a long time ago now, as of the end of March, especially since I'm working on actually April and May reports as we speak. But the news is fairly good and much as expected. Hopefully you had a chance to read the report, and essentially we are seeing mostly positive and stable results across all categories. I continue to watch fines and forfeitures, but not with a lot of interest because it's a small dollar amount in the scheme of things. And we know that our police are very, very well occupied and busy. And so I think they're at least ahead of what they were last year at this time. Otherwise, I would point out that, as we've talked about, MyNet has made its bond payments so far. We are expecting another one at the end of May. That will complete the full amount of their bond payments for the year. And I think that's all I would have to say regarding the overall status of the funds. Then I would refer you back to the capital projects pages, which are page 23 and 24 of the quarterly report. I'm not sure what they are in the packet. But what I wanted to draw your attention to there is the great progress on City Hall. You'll see that that's a big piece of the pie in the capital construction. And of course, our water projects are also making good progress. So that's exciting. And of course, with the water projects, we're using some ARPA funding for that. And we will be through our bond funding for capital for the City Hall, and now moving into some urban renewal support. Lastly, I wanted to highlight for the investment report that we continue to amass interest earnings, which is very helpful since we used some that have been in excess of budget to set aside a PERS reserve, a side account, to help hopefully reduce our rates going forward into the future. And I have made, in reference to Mayor Kuntz's comment about how much longer I'll be here, since I am not much longer here, I've decided to wait on filling out the 10 pages of forms to get our safekeeping account put in place, so that I only have to fill them out once for hopefully my successor to start up the safekeeping account, at which point we will hopefully be doing a little bit more investing outside of the LGIP, since it is now lagging the market fairly noticeably. And we do have the ability to go to a year and a half terms based on our current investment policy, which you will also be seeing in just a month's time, the update for that. So I think with that, I would welcome questions on the third quarter report, if any.
Questions?
Just another amazing report.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Carey.
Janet, I would just note that Mark Dumeyer's in the room and he's checked your work and he thinks it's okay as well.
So glad to hear it, Mark.
He didn't get as many greens when he was here. I don't know what that was.
Right? It's all me, Mark.
All right. Yes, Councillor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam
Big
Mayor.
question, an actual question, I think.
Yes, an actual question. Janet, I don't think I could let you get away without asking at least one question in this meeting here. So looking at the expenditures by category, I see, I see the capital outlay has jumped considerably. I have to imagine that that's the City Hall project. Is that correct?
Correct.
In the other categories there, the materials and services and personnel services appear to have increased by similar margins there. I'm having trouble on this graph estimating the percentage increase, is that similar to what we've seen previously?
Yes, yes.
This is
So
page 11.
yeah, yes. So personnel services, of course, we had COLAs and step increases. So that's probably mostly the percentage that you're seeing over the prior year. And that is something that I could add. I realize it's kind of hard to tell. The numbers are at a very high level there. But that's not unexpected that year over year we would see an increase even with vacancies. And we are growing our staff, typically by about a position a year is what we're seeing relative to the prior year. And with materials and services, you're seeing inflation is the large part of that represents.
Gotcha. And I thought so, but I didn't want to assume. And then with a final comment, congratulations on all the grain.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully it stays there.
Concludes my questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right. That takes us to our next item of business, which is a consideration adopting our trolley stops in those parking zones. Since people seem to be riding the thing, I guess we better plan for this. So, Public Works Director Russ Cooper.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Kuntz and members of council. What I have before you tonight is a resolution that would adopt 2 new trolley stops and would repeal 2 existing ones. The change here is a result of once the trolley system got operating, there was a movement that was occurring way more frequently with the trolleys than with the chariot systems, where it was cutting across traffic, oncoming traffic, and the operators felt that deleting that so that it was all right turns and they weren't cutting across the Main Street traffic, both safety cutting across, but also the delay and backing up along Main Street. So what this does is this establishes, I'll say it repeals the 2 stops that were located in the 100 block of North Atwater Street and establishes the westbound stop that is at the corner of Heffley and Main, and then establishes the new eastbound stop that would be at the corner of South Atwater and Main. A little bit of financial implications here as far as removing paint from the curbs and putting new paint on. And then I will say that the signs have already been moved. The actions are occurring. So this is kind of a memorializing something that's in place, but it does allow for enforcement of the no parking zones associated with those bus stops moving forward. So I do have a proposed motion in there and more than happy to take questions.
This is so obvious, and that trolley is it's busy all the time. So I don't want to do the motion though, because I think Councilor Belts would like to do it.
Oh, I always appreciate that. Let's see. I move to adopt resolution 19. Oh, wait. Oops. I'm sorry. I think I went one too far.
Nope.
Resolution. Oh, no. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah.
You're right.
I move to adopt resolution 1962, a resolution designating no parking zones and bus stops and repealing portions of resolution 1895.
And I will second it.
All right. Moved and seconded, and I'll just let Chris know if you have questions or something, if you want to direct them to Russ after this. We don't typically, we probably can't help you for one thing. So if you want to visit with him once he finishes the item, that would be great. All right. Any other questions or observations? Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I love that we're taking steps to make the trolley route a little bit more functional, a little bit safer. Will this do anything to mitigate the traffic backing up behind the trolley? I have heard a couple resident comments about the trolleys backing up traffic, and I have to imagine that it has something to do with those maneuvers you were talking about, right? Crossing traffic and slowing to do that. Does this help in that case?
These 2 stops will not create the backing up issue. I will say most of the other stops from basically east of this location, the buses, they try to move over, but they still impede the lane of travel. And so there is some backing up occurring on those.
Okay, and so that's the handful of, or the couple stops east of the location, but this won't address that.
Correct.
Yeah, this one, they're actually take that little loop off the road. It's them pulling across to pull back onto Main Street. But Marty has a comment.
Oh,
on
okay.
that.
I don't have much more to add, except that the trolleys came equipped with a light that said "Do not pass," and the operators have turned that light off. And we've tried on our website about the trolley and also through Chariots when folks are able to call in and give comments to let people know that it's
Not a
permitted-
school bus.
It's permitted to
Yes.
pass the trolley, although as Mr. Cooper identifies, it's not easy to do that when it's in the lane. So we're recognizing that that's been a traffic generator or a slower.
If more people take the trolley and get the cars off the road, then we won't
That's
have
right.
to worry.
That's a good point.
Here,
Every
here.
person in the trolley is another less person on the road. That's a great point. Thank you.
Did you have another question? Or?
That concludes my questions. Thank you.
It'll be better on this backup business if Independence will get their no parking strips painted. They've got a couple that they're missing that right in front of parallel 49 or 45, so I'm told.
Yes.
So anyway, if they get that cleaned up, that'll help. And then, but a substantive question and not one that will change my vote in any way, but what was wrong with the one right directly across from the medical center there, the one on Atwater, north of Main Street?
I'm not sure that there was necessarily a problem with that one. It's the Chariots, the service providers are who requested the actual locations of where these stops would go, and they weren't anything that we saw as a conflict.
And it probably won't really do much to deter people, using the trolley to get to their medical appointments there, but that was pretty convenient right across the street. I'm pretty sure they can find their way there, but I just wonder whether there was a problem. Nope, that's fine.
All right, we will take a roll call on resolution number 1962, a resolution designating no parking zones and bus stops and repealing portions of resolution 1895.
All right, Roxanne Belts,
Aye.
John Kerry,
Aye.
Christopher Lopez,
Aye.
Carol McKeel,
Yes.
John Oberst is excused, Rebecca Salinas Oliveros,
Aye.
and Cecilia Kuntz.
I don't usually
Or,
vote unless there's a
That's right.
tie.
never mind. So the motion
Come
passes.
sometime during urban renewal, 'cause then I get to vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
everybody. Thanks, Russ. And now our next item of business is initiation of a street vacation, which does not mean the streets get the day off.
Right. Good distinction to me.
Thank you, Community and Economic Development Director Suzanne Duffner.
Good evening. Thank you, Honorable Mayor. And I'm here to present the staff report to request an initiation of a street vacation. And this is in the City Hall block, so the very block that we're in right now. There was a dispute over the width of the alleyway that runs north and south right behind us in this block, next to where the new City Hall is being built. Earlier survey records indicated it was 30 feet. We did the planning based on that. Came out later in the construction process that it's actually platted at 33 feet. So there's a 3-foot discrepancy on that alley width. And so we're proposing to vacate that 3 feet because it's not needed for the alley, for the access for that, to clean that up and make it consistent with what we initially believed it to be was the 30 feet. So this would be for the entire alley width. Tonight's action is to simply initiate the street vacation process. There's a specific process that we need to follow according to the Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 271. So we will be coming back with you in the future to have a public hearing. We'll be providing notice to the adjacent property owners posting the property, all the steps that we need to take to comply with the state laws. So tonight, again, is just a simple motion to initiate that action. And there's a map that also shows that in your packets. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes, Counselor Carey.
Is that alley going to be used for utility drop-offs, continue to be used? Is that?
That is a good question. I'm just looking at the site plan, and yes, there is. It's a slightly different different location than it was previously. It was kind of the earlier part of the alley. Now they've shifted it further south a little bit, but there is still shown on the site plan a utility drop-off box. Mhm.
I was just trying to figure out what the need for that alley was, and that's it.
Yeah.
Gotta have that. All right.
Good for my bicycle.
Oh,
I ride
that's
up my
very
bicycle.
convenient for bicyclists.
So,
Counselor Lopez.
Oh, I was going to make a motion, but I can hold.
nope, no, I
All
was
right.
just going to do this as well.
Madam Mayor, I move to indicate, oh goodness, I can't speak tonight. Thank you. I move to initiate a street vacation for the easterly 3 feet of the alley located in the 100 block of Main Street from Main Street West to Clay Street West.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Lopez for the motion and Counselor Salinas Oliveros for the second. Seeing no questions, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Counselor Belts. And motion passes. We'll get started on that and it'll
Bring that
come
back to you
us.
shortly.
Our last item on our business agenda this evening is the noise code amendments, ordinance 1409. And this, there is an error in the agenda. This is only our first reading of the actual ordinance as drafted. So I'll let Marty remind us what all we're accomplishing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you tonight is first reading of our draft ordinance 1409. Over the last 6 or 8 months, you've had several work sessions and discussions about how the city can better respond to noise complaints when we receive them. Specifically, the complaints that we had received in the past were around amplified music. After some debate about the right model to use, what we've come up with is a draft ordinance that does a few things, including give us a better definition of what unreasonably loud noise, a standard that for allowable noise. We put some decibel level measurements in place in the code so that when our police department responds to noise complaints, they have something to, basically a standard to work from to identify what's too loud. And that's done by zone. And it, there was one other thing that our ordinance did that I wanted to point out to you, and it is, actually that's it. And it's got certain days and hours or times of day when excessive noise is regulated. So the chief regrets that he couldn't be here tonight. If you have questions for him, we can certainly hold this over so that you can discuss how the police department might respond to complaints in the future. But we have first reading that we're proposing for you tonight. And I'd welcome any questions that you have.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a question about the bullet point that says required notice or coordination with neighbors for noise generating events to avoid event conflicts. And I believe we've spoke about this, about an application process. Is that what that is? Or a coordinated calendar? Like,
I would say the council's discussion, I think, took two paths, and they were two different paths. Initially, what we brought you in a draft ordinance was a permit process by which someone who would be generating noise would come in and basically state such and ask to have a variance from that process. And the feedback we got from council was that that was probably not it would end up being an unwieldy process about how and when to grant those permits. And the coordination among neighbors, likewise, I think the goal was to not have the city be in the position of being the arbiter of who could have noisy events and when. So, and And so we removed provisions that also required coordination or notification of a noisy event because the permit process wasn't included. So in the end, I have heard of a community calendar being talked about in multiple venues here in Monmouth as something that's desirable so that folks know what's going on at which times. And I think that there are efforts underway through our business association and with the university to create that kind of a calendar. But I think we decided that as it related to our noise code, it probably didn't belong there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Councillor Lopez, then Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a comment rather than a question, but I'll just offer that I've been watching this the evolution of this very closely, and I recognize the amount of staff time and work and the amount of engagement that's surrounded crafting something that would work well both for the city and the community and the 8-year-olds trying to sleep. So I just wanted it on the record that I recognize and appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I've read it through a handful of times in its current iteration, and I just think y'all have done a fantastic job in creating something that'll work well for our community.
Question, definitional one. When we're talking about the measurement of the with the decibels, when that becomes an issue, it says the receiving land use. I'm assuming that would be the complaining property owner.
That's correct.
So wherever you are, you have that, and then I'm a little confused, and it's probably obvious, but pick for example the noise sensitive section from in the chart I'm talking now. 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. measurable decibels would be at, I don't know what 65 is, but it's a number. After 10 until 7 a.m., it can drop to 60. So you're turning it from 10 down to 9 and it can go all night.
The difference he's saying between 60
Yeah.
For allowable noise.
Do you know something about that, Chris?
Yeah, so decibels are really interesting, right? So you have to remember that it's not a linear scale. Every 3 decibels is about doubling in sound volume. So it's not, so 60 to 69 is not the same as going from 50 to 60. It's an exponential scale. So so even though it might look like, the difference between 65 and 60, in the noise sensitive section, that difference between 60 and 65 decibels is fairly considerable. And so it even though it does on paper, the numbers don't look that different. It is a significant difference in allowed volume.
And I would just add, I mentioned that although Chief Haynes is not here, one of you asked at one of our prior work sessions how we arrived at these decibel levels in the first place. And I would say that when we looked at other communities and their noise codes, there are similar ranges of these decibels in some of our neighboring cities. But I know if Chief Haynes were here, he would say that we are going to see how this goes. I think that we don't know if our community events are going to exceed these noise limits and we'll get a complaint about them at this point, or whether between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. that dialing down from 65 to 60 is going to either generate more complaints, or if we're going to have to see sort of like where this goes.
Yeah, it's just hard. And
Understood.
When you said that, I was reminded that at one point I knew that, but I've forgotten it. Because it does, it's again, and it's going to be a little trial and error, apparently. So, okay, that's, and that seems to have worked in other jurisdictions. Is that our sense?
Yes, we interviewed some of our neighbors and also some of the examples that we brought you, and to learn about their experiences. In some cases, you know, there's knowledge that there are routinely events that exceed these decibel limits, but it also enforcement happens on a complaint basis. So really giving our police department the tools they need to go out and respond to the complaints is where we were focusing on.
And you're clear in a number of instances where, you know, the be all end all is not the decibel reading. There are a myriad of factors that can lead to that. You know, it would be interesting, you know, early on before we get to the second reading, if we've got a music performance going on, to somebody to snap a little, you know, see what we get from a receiving property.
Actually did that last year at the Music in the Park event, but we hadn't been talking about those standards at that time. So the police department has ordered the decibel meter in anticipation that this ordinance may pass, so that they can understand, you know, how it operates, and maybe we can give you an example.
Well, if they have it that weekend, then we can do it with the peacock calling contest and find out how loud that is.
Thank you, Mr. Belts.
Well, and that was my question. It's like, how loud is 70? And we'll find out from the peacock calling.
Yes, but annoyance is different than noise.
I'd love to use this same standard on which I believe we can, the Jake breaking log trucks, barreling down 99 at 4 in the morning.
Or a person in my neighborhood with that very loud muffler.
Yeah.
I would like to conduct the first reading of the ordinance amending Monmouth City Code sections 8.05.140 and 8.05.150 and adopting new provisions relating to unnecessary noise. And we'll hear this back for a second reading and adoption. Found any other little Scribner's errors or anything, be sure to pass those along so that we can get them correct in the final version. All right, that takes us to our work session tonight. And I'm giving Suzanne a moment to get back up here. Very excited to be able to move forward on the housing production strategy. And before Suzanne gives us the staff report, I just, you know, I'm reminded that by reading, especially the executive summary, how much we started this proactively. We would have been required to do this once it was announced that we had a population of over 10,000, and the fact that we got in ahead of the game. And we are now ready to adopt this. And also a quick reminder that the grant that allowed us to hire people to do this work, including all of the outreach and everything, has to be taken care of by May 31st. So tonight's the night, folks, to get this on the books so that we can not only start the work, the action steps that are listed, but to be able to finish out the grant. So. Suzanne.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to make Matt the presenter here. So my mouse is doing something weird. Try that. Okay, thank you for that. So yes, good evening. This is our work session to review the draft housing needs, housing production strategy. We've already completed our housing needs analysis. This is part 2. So as you recall, this is a grant that we received from the Oregon Department of Land Conservation Development in 2021 to identify specific strategies or actions the city of Monmouth can take to construct more needed housing in our community. This is also consistent with the council's priority number 3 that talks about affordable housing. States the city will continue to implement and update a variety of activities to meet current and future housing needs, and specifically affordable housing. So we're winding down, as the mayor had mentioned, the work on this. This is our last work session with the consultant, with Matt Hasty and Carrie Bretnicky. So please, if you have questions, want to make sure those get answered. And we'll be bringing this back to you for final approval next month. And I think just in terms of, Matt has a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. Feel free to ask questions that are clarification as we go through, as they come up, but we could maybe hold the discussion questions till the end. That'll make sure that we can move through those materials in a timely manner. So yeah, with that, if I can make Matt the presenter. Okay, looks like we can see it.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I'm sorry I missed you last time or last month, but I'm glad to see you tonight. So I'm going to walk through a relatively brief presentation, and some of it will be a repeat of what you heard the last time we met jointly with you and the Planning Commission. So I'm going to give you just kind of a review or an update on where we are in the process, which really Suzanne's already talked about. We're kind of just about at the end here. Describe kind of generally what's in the Housing Production Strategy Report. Talk about the process we went through to prioritize strategies, because we did sort of prioritize strategies in terms of short-term or relatively higher priorities, and then medium-term or medium to long, which in this case is not that much longer, because the sort of the time frame for an HPS is 8 years. So it's kind of, what are you going to try to accomplish in the first few years versus the latter half. And it doesn't mean you can't work on things, you know, sooner rather than later, but it just gives us a sense of what we all said was relatively more important. So we'll talk about those. I won't go into a ton of detail on those because we've talked about them with you previously. And then talk a little bit about kind of a couple other sections of the HPS report, which talk about equitable outcomes associated with different strategies, and then kind of how you monitor progress on implementing strategies. So I'll talk about those a little bit. And then one of the other pieces of work we did as part of this process that we talked about a little bit at the last work session were some case study evaluations associated with 3 specific strategies. Not necessarily the highest priority ones, but ones we thought you would benefit from a little more research on. So talk about those, and then there's not too, next steps will go real fast because there's not a lot of next steps at this point in the process. So that's what I'll go through. And as Suzanne said, if you have questions for clarification as I go through, just let me know. And then happy to have more discussion at the end. So just in terms of the schedule, I didn't put a little like red star, we are here, but we are in May. So this is the last, as Suzanne said, it's kind of my last meeting with all of you prior to Suzanne coming back to you in June with an ordinance or resolution to approve or adopt the document. So that's kind of where we are. And we do have a chance to make some changes before then. So if we identify things that need to be changed tonight, then we've got some time to do that. So, you know, what is a housing production strategy? I've talked about this before, and Suzanne said it pretty well just a moment ago. It's really a set of actions to facilitate housing development that meets the needs of the community and that have been documented, for instance, in both your housing needs analysis that was done a couple of years ago, and then kind of fleshed out in a little more detail in the contextualized housing needs assessment that's part of this process. And it identifies specific actions to promote development of those types of housing that are identified. It kind of evaluates housing needs. It identifies the strategies. It provides some relative priorities. And then we've got this project, the report that you've got a draft of. That's kind of the culmination of the work, and that's what you end up adopting as part of the process. So the report itself, we've got an executive summary that tries to kind of fairly concisely summarize what's in the rest of the document. We've talked previously about the contextualized housing needs element, so that gets summarized as well. There's a number of these items that are in the report. There's more detailed information that'll be in a set of appendices for people who really want to get way down into the weeds. They'll have those things available to them as well. So a summary of engagement efforts that we went through as part of this process. And then kind of the heart of the document is this description of strategies and actions, but then also sections on achieving fair and equitable housing outcomes and by didn't include it here, but monitoring progress in implementing actions, and then just some conclusions. So in terms of the information about the strategies, there's kind of this list of things that for each strategy are described in the report. So what's the relative priority? What do we mean when we're talking about a given strategy? What are we recommending in terms of how it's implemented? What things do y'all need to think about in terms of in terms of implementing it, and including funding, challenges, opportunities, et cetera? What types of folks is the strategy aimed at benefiting or helping, or what types of housing is the strategy aimed at helping produce? What are the actions you or others might need to take to implement it, and who are some of the partners? I mean, some of these things aren't things where the city even necessarily takes the lead, and the city as a city doesn't build new housing, but works with other folks to build it. So a lot of this really is about partnering with other organizations to make some of these things happen. So in terms of the relative priorities in the document, I wanted to just kind of summarize how we went through that process. A lot of that came from meetings with you all and the Planning Commission. We had meetings with each of you to talk about relative priorities, what seemed to be the most important versus maybe the least important. We used that information in large part to identify priorities, but we also interviewed a number of housing stakeholders, providers, landowners, partnering organizations to get a sense of what things they thought are kind of most beneficial or I guess effective in moving the needle on some of those things. We conducted an online open house and a survey as part of that, using a story map platform, and asked people to tell us which things they supported as well. And then we've been working on similar projects for other communities around the state. So we use a certain amount of, our experience on this to inform the priorities as well. And also, again, some of the case studies we did and just some of the previous research we've done on these strategies. So all of those things went into the prioritization, but really a lot of it came from the discussions with you all and the Planning Commission. So the things, and these are not listed in order of like highest priority to lowest among the higher priority ones. It's just the ones that kind of rose to the top half, let's say. And so they include, I'll just really briefly kind of read through them. Rezoning land from low or medium density to higher density. And that was kind of a direct outcome of some of the findings from the housing needs analysis, as well as was increasing the allowed density or range of housing types. Code amendments to allow for small housing types, you've already kind of accomplished that one in large part. There might be still some more to do in the future, but your recent code amendments are going to go a long ways towards that. So that's great. Encouraging a mix of residential and commercial use in commercial areas. Looking at potentially amending your UGB, your urban growth boundary in the future when there's the kind of the factual basis to do that, let's say. So really that's about like maintaining an adequate supply of land to allow for building the kind of housing you need in the future. System development charges, could look at deferrals of those or exemptions or reductions for specific types of housing. Often deferrals can be across the board, and more often exemptions or reductions are aimed at specific types of housing. Tax abatement programs also aimed at different types of housing. There's a number of those programs authorized by the state. That's something you can do on kind of a project by project basis, or you could decide that for a given type of exemption, you're going to do that for anybody that qualifies. So, and that's a really important one for a lot of affordable housing developers. Public-private partnerships, again, you're not doing this alone, supporting the other folks out there who are building housing, providing services, et cetera, super important. And coordinating with people who own property where those kinds of projects might be able to be undertaken is also pretty important as well. So those are the things that made it into the kind of highest priority or shortest term list of strategies. But there's a variety of other things that we talked about. and they're kind of split up into categories. So there's a number of things related to land supply and regulation of land. These I won't go through. I'll go through even maybe more quickly. So incentives, zoning incentives, that's like height bonuses or density bonuses or parking reductions associated with specific types of housing. Thinking about updating your code to have explicit provisions for single room occupancy housing or group housing is something you could look at. Land acquisition and banking, that's kind of a bigger lift for a smaller city. You could look at that sort of more opportunistically earlier on, but a sort of a larger program would be, I'd say, a kind of longer term thing. Promoting and incentivizing accessible design. And I think some of these things are things you could make progress on in the shorter term, even if they're not in the kind of highest priority buckets. Requiring accessible design for publicly supported units. You'll see some discussion about kind of just being careful about not putting too large burdens on some of those affordable housing developments when you do that. So kind of think carefully about that is kind of what we heard from affordable housing developers. Inclusionary zoning is something you could look at longer term, but I would recommend you think about it as more of a like voluntary inclusionary zoning sort of program, more by using incentives for those types of housing. And then pre-approved plan sets for middle housing types. That's something that I think, people find pretty intriguing and could be fairly helpful, but it will take a little bit of work in terms of making sure the pre-approved plans match up with what your zoning ordinance and development code allow for. So there's some examples out there kind of around the state that you could use and adapt potentially, but they would take some adapting. Expediting permitting for affordable or needed housing. I think that one, you are not slow right now necessarily at permitting things, and you need the staff capacity to do that. And that's why we didn't put that in necessarily the higher priority bucket. Couple construction excise tax, something to look at in the longer term as a source of funding for affordable housing programs in particular. And then financial assistance programs. I think that's more about kind of supporting other agencies in them implementing the programs that are already out there. I think that's important. Less of a high priority for you to kind of institute your own program, I guess. And I would say somewhat same thing about tenant protection programs and policies. There are already state requirements around that. And I think, we heard some different opinions about that during the process. So kind of supporting what's out there is probably more important than trying to create your own set of rules and regulations around that. I mean, definitely supporting expanded transit service in Monmouth and to key destinations is important. You're not in totally the driver's seat on that, but you can support the transit providers in doing that. And then I think community education on needed housing and how it benefits folks to have this full range of housing options is pretty important. And so I think that's probably one where you could make some progress sooner rather than later, but it didn't make it through that prioritization process into the kind of top bucket of strategies. So that's kind of a summary of the relative priorities. This is sort of something that I think fair and equitable outcomes. This is something that I think is important to the city. And it's also something that the state says we need to kind of identify how these different strategies either benefit or potentially could burden different types of populations and households. So there's a summary in the report about that, and it looks at different factors related to equity and stability in terms of producing affordable home ownership housing, as well as affordable rental housing, how does it impact stability of housing and just the broad range of housing options, as well as the location of housing and fair housing. How it can affirmatively further fair housing laws and not have an adverse impact on protected classes related to the fair housing law. Finally, there's some information in the HPS around monitoring progress. And we didn't sort of go into this for every single strategy. We talked about it in terms of how might you monitor progress on different types of strategies or categories. So it's going to kind of vary, depends on the strategy. In some cases, you can say, well, hey, we adopted code amendments last year, or this year, and that's the progress we've made on that set of strategies. You can look at, and all of these comes with this caveat at the bottom of the screen that how well you can monitor this depends on available information. So we want to just sort of be clear about that it's important for the city to monitor these things, but you have to have the info to do it. And we don't want to sort of identify things that are too onerous or you wouldn't have the info. But I think there are a number of ways to monitor different types of strategies. And that's kind of what we laid out in this section of the plan. So that's, I think, it in terms of the contents and the type of information in that housing production strategy report. I will pretty briefly talk about these 3 strategies that we did the case study research on. And when I say we, I really mean Carrie. Well, when I say we about all this stuff, I mostly mean Carrie. So I want to give a shout out to Carrie and all the work she did on this. So we looked at 3 things, and we looked at different communities in the state who have undertaken these strategies. The first one was rezoning land from low or medium density to high density. The second was different types of changes in how cities apply and collect system development charges. And the third one was public and private or public-private partnerships between cities and typically affordable housing developers. So talk about those briefly. So in terms of rezoning land from low or medium density to higher density, usually that's done at the request of property owners, less often as sort of a legislative action by a city, but sometimes it is. And so some of the examples that we talked about in that report, a specific one in Hood River, where the city owned the property and it rezoned the property to allow for development of affordable housing project. And then it worked with those developers to go through that process. Our firm actually helped with the staff report for that and with sort of the findings justifying the rezone. City of Bend, subsequent to and as part of their urban growth boundary planning project a few years ago, identified a variety of opportunity areas within the city and then went through and made a number of changes to both the standards in their development code, but also the zoning on the properties to increase the potential capacity for housing in those areas. And then we worked on a plan in Estacada where they didn't actually rezone land from one designation to another, but they did incorporate some language in their comprehensive plan that talked about areas with certain characteristics near transit, near the downtown, near particular types of services or are particularly appropriate for that rezoning. And if somebody comes in with an application in one of those areas, they kind of get a leg up. They don't have to demonstrate the consistency with that policy if they're in those areas. And we identified those areas on a set of kind of resource maps. So those are all some ways different cities have done this one around the state. System development charges, again, there's sort of different ways to come at this. And so there's a number of cities, and this is something you probably look at longer term, but tying your systems development charges to the size of the house, because they really are about the impact on use of water, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, et cetera. So there's a number of cities that have recently done this. Albany, Newport, and Prineville have updated their systems development charge methodologies to tie the fee to the size of the house that's being built. So that's one example. That's something you would typically do at a point when you are getting ready to update those SDC methodologies and to sort of pull in that approach. There are a number of cities that provide reduced STCs for qualifying affordable housing developments. Cities of Bend and Tigard both do that. They do that for projects that then are deed restricted so that they remain affordable for a specified period of time. So those projects have to stay affordable to people in a certain income range for 20, 40, or 50 years. to get those exemptions or reductions in SDCs. And then the city of Gresham defers when they collect the SDCs, and they allow them to be paid over time. So that reduces financing costs for developers. So it's kind of, it doesn't reduce the amount of money that comes into the city. It just kind of changes when the money comes in. So that's one to at least, I think, look at potentially sooner rather than later, because it doesn't reduce your revenues, but it can reduce the cost of providing the housing. And then the last thing we talked about in the case study research was just different examples, specific examples of public-private partnerships in a number of communities around Oregon. And some of the ones we featured were the Nueva Esperanza development that Bienestar is undertaking in Hillsborough. There's a number of Habitat for Humanity projects around the state, including in your area. And then Dev Northwest has projects in Salem and other cities kind of around the state. And there's other organizations and cities that they partnered with around the state as well. But those were just some of the ones that we highlighted in that research piece. So I just wanted to kind of summarize all that. And then I think, the point tonight is just for me to update you on what's in front of you, make sure we're still on the right track, see if you have any questions, anything that needs to be clarified, find out if there's anything in this document that doesn't make sense to you, any gaps. If you have like specific edits, sort of wordsmithing type things, we would love to get those, but I would suggest sending those by email to Suzanne so we don't walk through all those this evening. So that's kind of what we're looking for, or any other comments or questions you might have. And just in terms of next steps, again, we've got the opportunity to make some additional changes up until our contract ends around the end of this month, and then provide Suzanne with some presentation materials and a sort of final draft HPS report to take to y'all next month. So that's kind of what's left on our plate. So I'm going to stop talking. I can leave the presentation up, or I can stop sharing and just take questions without it on the screen. I don't know if anybody has a preference.
Why don't we go ahead and leave it up, Matt, just so if people do want to refer back, we can leave it up for a little bit, but see how the discussion or questions go. Councilor Lopez.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much, Matt and team, for all the work that's gone into this. It's a lot, and your timeline really helps to keep it in scope of well, by we I mean you and we, but mostly you have been really working on this for years, right? And so it shows when you dive into the detail here. One of those details within this is something I'd like to take a minute and maybe discuss, and that's in each of your strategies, or in each of these strategies, if you look at the identified housing need addressed section, and I'll just pick one at random. I'll look at the public-private partnerships. It's page 108 of our packet, page 61 of the housing production strategy booklet there. And we look at that, and looking at populations served, defining income levels, housing types, etc. In this room, I think, and in council, we've discussed a little bit about what exactly is affordable housing, right? And I believe Councilor Carey and I were talking about this earlier today. And I look at this income levels, 0 to 120% AMI on this particular strategy. AMI being area median income. And going through it, I noticed that different strategies really have impacts on different ranges of that area median income. And so here's my question. When I look at this, it seems like a very nuanced, very flexible document. do you have any guidance for us on where we should set that kind of mental threshold of what affordable means? And so I recognize that it is a continuum and there needs to be fuzziness, right, to make sure that we're flexible enough to meet changing needs. But as I hone in on this, area median income is somewhere around 80, 100, 120. What becomes affordable versus not affordable when I try to define this in my mind?
Yeah, so I'll try to give you an answer on that. So 80% area median income, families who make below that are basically like in the bottom 40% of the income sort of continuum or range. A lot of state funding is targeted at that level or below. So I think that's one thing to be thinking about when you're thinking about different strategies or projects, is who is able to get state funding for what types of projects. There are some programs that are targeted for 60% or below. Some are targeted a lot more targeted for 80% or below. So again, you can think of that as folks who are in kind of the bottom 30 to 40% of the income range. And you can also think of that as people with low incomes. There's sort of 3 tiers of low income. There's extremely low, there's very low, and there's low. So it goes like 30, 60, 80. So, but from 80 down, it's relatively low. They're not making the median area median income. People who are in that kind of 80 to 120%, or households in the 80 to 120%, they're essentially middle income households. They're making somewhere around the median, a little lower, a little less. The projects for folks in the lower ranges, they really need more intervention and more subsidy to make them work, to make them pencil out. So they need more things like tax breaks, like state funding, like reduced SDCs, et cetera. Some of the projects that are more in the 80 to 120, you might be able to do that with market rate housing. I mean, there's market rate housing out there in that range. So, but it's still not easy to build housing that's affordable. It's still expensive to build housing that's affordable to folks in that range. And so there's still a need for strategies and programs that address those needs as well. So kind of the biggest subsidies tend to be for housing that's affordable to people, again, in the low income range, below 80, but still some benefits and some need for intervention, I guess, or support for housing for the middle income, folks in the middle income range. So I don't know, did that answer your question or help in terms of thinking about those numbers?
It does indeed. I do have 2 follow-up questions, if I may.
Sure.
The first follow-up question deals with what exactly that median income is here in Monmouth right now. And maybe exactly is the wrong word, but generally what is that figure here right now? Have you looked at that so we can use that as kind of a baseline when we're looking forward, or did I miss it in the report?
I believe it's in the kind of housing needs section of the report. I'm trying to kind of find that. It's definitely, there's some information on that in the housing needs analysis report that we've done a couple of years earlier, although that's, now like,
that's,
and the thing is, it varies by household size, right? So area median income is sort of tied to household size. Here we go. So estimated median household income, and this is 2018, so it's a little higher now, it's 37,000.
Page 58 of our packet.
Yeah, that's 58 of your packet. That's where you'll see some of that information. Again, this information's like that data is about 4 years old. So you tack on less than $5,000 probably dollars to that, and you're kind of hitting the area median income.
Okay. Great. And I'd seen that. I guess I feel like a lot's happened in the past 5 years, but I'll look elsewhere for those updated numbers. But it's good to, it's good to know that that is there. My final question, and it's probably in here, and I've seen it, and I've just lost it. You know, this report is goes very deep. What percentage in best practice? What percentage of a household's income should go to housing?
The kind of standard benchmark that's used to indicate whether somebody is the terms kind of is cost burdened is about 30%. So people who are spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs, and that's going to include if they have a mortgage, if they have rent plus utilities. So if they're spending more than 30% of their income on those things, they're said to be house burdened or cost burdened, excuse me. And if they're spending more than 50%, then they're said to be extremely cost burdened. And there are some statistics on that as well in the report, kind of in that same section of the report where the we just talked about. The other thing to note, and we've talked about this before, is your numbers get skewed a little bit because of the student population there. So when you kind of see what percent in Monmouth are cost burdened or extremely cost burdened, it does get a little skewed by some of the numbers related to students. But that's the sort of general indicator, is that 30%, anything more than that. And the other thing about that is, again, that tends to vary a lot by people in different income ranges. So you tend to see people in lower income ranges, a large percentage of them might be cost burdened, and higher income ranges, a much smaller percentage. When you get up, into the upper income ranges, they're usually sort of underpaying in terms of what they can afford for housing, and the folks at the lower end are overpaying.
Gotcha. That's very helpful, and that gives us a little equation that we can use to look forward and determine not only how we talk about what the threshold of affordability is, but also using the percentages in your report, which strategies we can use to kind of push on which areas, right? So that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually have kind of a follow-up.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor McKeel.
So along with that, on page 67, you have a chart of share of households spending more than 30% on housing costs. And I thought there's like a huge firework that's going off there, because it looks like the two groups, less than $20,000 and $20,000 to $34,000, we have really potential problems sitting in that category. So just kind of wow, we need to figure something out for this. But just kind of the danger zone there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because again, those folks, that money just does not go very far. They still have to find housing. If they don't have housing that's subsidized, if they don't have some kind of, public subsidy or housing voucher or something, then they're going to be spending almost always, more than that percent of their income on housing. So that's why you see such high percentages for those lower income groups. It's sort of almost everybody, if they, and more of them are going to be renters than owners. But even if they're owners, unless they have a really low mortgage, they're going to be they're going to be spending a lot of their income on housing. So.
Yeah, and maybe I actually, it was the owner one in particular, because the renters could possibly be students, but it's the owners that really frightened me, because that's like one paycheck away from homelessness. And well, maybe not it usually takes a couple months to lose a house, but we're actually looking at a population that's very unstable as we talk about homelessness.
Yeah.
I have a couple other questions, but I inserted myself here, so I will.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
If you.
Yeah.
Okay. The other, I know that well, now I have to prepare again. Okay. On page 61, it was the owner occupied households by race and ethnicity. And I know that you it's because of the sample size problems, but it'd be very, I think, we measure what we care about. And in that regard, it'd be good if we could get these numbers for Monmouth. Now, I don't know how, if we're looking at a citywide survey or something, it'd be really good to know what the race and ethnicity homeownership is, rather than just the Oregon numbers. And I'm not asking you to solve that. I'm just kind of like bringing that up.
Yeah, and I can check and see what's available. I do know that for some of these numbers, this one just says, does it say it's just for the state? I think this.
It's for Monmouth or Polk County. There's an asterisk at the bottom of that chart, and it says this data is presented on a statewide basis. Most recent census data, 2010. Did you see that?
Yeah,
the data
that's for
the
Oregon. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I can check with our data folks about this, and there are some issues I know, and some of these, if some of this information in terms of just the sample size and what we can get. But I can ask, and it might be that we can swap out this table if that data is available for Monmouth itself. So.
Well, and if it isn't, and I understand the sample size thing. I mean, I don't understand it because I'm not a statistician, but I understand never mind. It would be good if we could figure out as a city some way to capture that information in some way.
Sure.
And I just have one more, and I could have missed it, but it looked like the cohort for poverty was very large, 18 to 65. Which actually could conflate. We don't really know which of those are students, because it would be better to have that population from 18 to 23 and then from 24 to 65. And I think it'd give us more information about who the people are that are really struggling. I mean, students shouldn't struggle anyway, but that is a population that is unique. But I'm afraid that cohort is too wide in age.
Okay, so I know Carrie's taking some notes, and we're gonna check back with the folks at Johnson Economics who provided a lot of this demographic data, and see if there's some additional data we can get on a couple of these. Yeah, I don't disagree.
Thank you, Councilor Curry, for letting me continue.
Thank you for the work. It's good. Some of the concerns that we've expressed about the timeliness and the contemporaneous nature of the data is hard to keep up with when you've got a longitudinal process like this. And we're dealing with stuff 13 years old here in some cases, or 5 years old in terms of income. That's knowable information. So I think we can find that when we get right down to the business of it. Just a couple of things that, first of all, some things that are not in the report, at least I didn't see, and I scanned the majority of it. There is no reference or no mention of housing rehabilitation and preserving the affordable housing that we have. If you think about a house that's a bit dilapidated and somebody's about to move out of it, there's already infrastructure to the building. There's already sewer, there's already water, there's power. So a lot of those costs for new construction are already there. Unlike, depending on the degree of remodel, there may or may not be system development charges related to that. So to me, that's an opportunity, and we can, we can just think about the neighborhood I live in. There's 5 or 6 houses that I could take you to right now and say they're unoccupied, and they could be occupied if we, hit the right buttons. And I don't profess to know exactly which ones they are, but I think it's easier to maintain than to build. And so I think that's something that we ought to find a way to weave into this, because if we don't, we lose it. and now we've got to build to replace. And I know we've got the county grant and all that jazz, but there's ways for more of that. And the other thing, and this came up in the meeting that Chris and I were at today, there's no real clear line for urban renewal dollars here to help us. We've just expanded in just a major amendment to our urban renewal district. And, one of the things that and I haven't got this thought all the way worked out, but I think it's worth pursuing as we get down the track of ways. If we use the urban renewal dollars, I mean, Russ has done a wonderful job of planning infrastructure things that we need, thank goodness. And and some of those may be things that would qualify for system development, charge development, utilization of SDCs for that. If it could be justified that we were to use urban renewal dollars for those same projects, that would take the pressure off the system development charge and allow us perhaps to rebate, further defer, or waive altogether. If we can blend those, and I don't know if that's legal. I don't profess to know how to do it, but conceptually, I think it's a thought that we could.
That's what we've done before when we waived or lowered SDCs, for example, for Ross.
Yeah.
We backfilled from urban renewal.
Right, and that money has come back in spades. So that's good.
Not for
good catch.
housing, we've done it for commercial, but
Sure, but we're focusing on the housing at the moment. So good recollection. One of the things, and it's a bit of a conundrum to me, and one of the things that's on our list is the construction excise tax, which would be a tax on construction, which makes it more expensive to build things, so we can pay for other things that we build. That's a bit of a conundrum for me, and I don't know how well that sells. But I guess if we get to that, we'll learn that. And I noticed in the rating system, I believe the community education on the value and need of affordable housing was sort of a low priority. I'd suggest that is a high priority. It's low-hanging fruit, number one. And number two, we've got the issue going on over at Christ Church tonight, and likely to perhaps going to come forward to here, getting out in front of the narrative, getting out in front of the need and the value to all of that seems to be a high, if not the highest priority. That we get that word out. There's a lot of, I think we could help ourselves with that. The concern is for land. We're interested in getting more land, and we'll remind the group that we voted to include commercial properties and commercial businesses in residential areas, taking up residential land that could have been used for residents. Well, I mean, that's the fact. Now, it may be worth it, but that's exactly what we did. So, and as we rezone, as I understand it, and this is where I could use a clarification, if we rezone from the low medium density to a higher density, and I think all the things that you noted were good, adjacency to other higher density, I think that was good, but that would be rezoning private land without, and perhaps without the owner's blessings. Would that be true?
It could be. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience with city-initiated zone changes, but usually we contact property owners and try to work with willing ones first.
Yeah,
so we don't have to.
It's pretty rare that you do that over the objections of the property owner whose land you're, rezoning. I think that's sort of implicit that you're going to want to and need to coordinate with folks in those areas.
Yeah, and
gotta get that.
So sort of our number one strategy would be dependent upon buy-in. That's where the education piece would be really valuable. you know, there's a high hill to climb, and when you plug that formula, put that formula together, Counselor Lopez, you're going to be surprised at what a low cost of construction you're going to be able to fit that into.
Oh, I've got it in front of me right now.
It's a tough one. It can be done, and it will be done one way or the other. And I think that in our rush to go towards the the high density residential. And by the way, we were sweating bullets over going to like 24 units per acre. Isn't that when we ended up on the code amendment?
I believe so.
I think so. And the developers are saying, man, it needs to be 50. Holy cow. We sort of missed the mark on that one. But one of the things that we're looking for in housing, and I know it's transitional, but if we're interested in developing generational wealth, that isn't necessarily done through rentals. And it could be temporary, and which would be valuable. But, and we're doing the same thing with the ADUs and all that. That is not building that intergenerational wealth that we're all interested in providing. And we also need to not turn our back on the single family residential or the single unit residential or whatever, because we have need in that area as well. And, I just gave, I think if we want to build high level business, we want to attract high level business, top quality faculty or top quality provost candidates, we need to have housing that would fit that income level. Microsoft wants to locate in Monmouth. Can't do it. We got no housing for the execs, and we can't build for that, but we can't turn our back on that. So anyway, it's good work. It's going to be a lot of sorting out. I'll have more when I get a chance to dig a little more deeply, but good thoughts, all of it. Thank you.
Sure. And, just a couple quick responses. One, when you suggested moving the education piece into the list of high priority strategies, almost everybody I saw on the screen who reacted that I could see nodded their head up and down, not, sideways. So it seems to me like I'm at least seeing most of you say, oh yeah, that seems like a good idea in terms of how we prioritize that particular strategy. So that's an easy change for us to make if you all think that would be a good idea, and it looks like most of you would. So I might suggest we do that. I would just note, the reason I would agree with you that it's important to provide opportunities for all types of housing. The reason that rezone to higher density is one of the high priority strategies is because you have a really limited supply of land that's zoned in that way. You guys have very few acres, and so that was one of the findings of the housing needs analysis. It's not to say that you don't need land for those other types of housing. It's just to say that was in particularly short supply. I also would agree that it would be really good to weave some language in related to rehabilitating existing housing. I'd absolutely agree with the comments on that. And then also, I'm not exactly sure why we didn't end up with a strategy related to urban renewal in this document. It's something we often talk about in cities, but I think it would be worthwhile to talk about how that tool could be used in tandem with some of the other strategies in the document, and I think we could add some references to that. So I think we asked if there are any gaps, and I think those are good gaps to point out, and those are areas where we could add some language and narrative to talk about those things. So appreciate all of those comments. And I think, it gives us some good food for thought for some additional, for some changes and additions we could make to the report before it gets to you next month.
And I'm thinking we even did the SDC reduction for the Catron Street project back in the day, my first term.
Yes.
Council.
Yeah.
So we did do it for a multi-housing unit as well.
And I think we deferred that.
I think we deferred, but I think we used urban renewal.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Historian.
Yes. It was.
Hey, he's been around, yeah. Didn't we do that?
Urban
Yes,
renewal.
Yeah, so we've done it for commercial and for multi-unit residential as well. So, all right, other comments or questions? I checked with Counselor Belts and she doesn't have anything to add because she said Chris and John picked up her questions. So,
No, neither do I. Great
All right.
points. Like this was a great discussion.
all right, I think at this point then, have some go forth and maybe retool and
Yeah, no, these are great comments. We'll make sure those get incorporated in and the draft that comes back in June. So if you have
Yeah.
any others, feel free to reach out and send your comments to me or questions as well.
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much, Suzanne. Thank you,
Yeah,
Matt.
good work.
Yes, Mary.
Yeah, Matt and Perry.
Really good work.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Our pleasure and good to see you tonight.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, for our reports tonight, I will start off with a couple things. One is just a reminder, I'll do this for Counselor Belts. This is community announcements, but also we do have the Peacock Festival this weekend, as mentioned, and I know we have another event that evening, and so really excited about all the great things going on. And during community announcements, we'll hear a little bit more about those, but it's just really fun to see people getting excited and weather's here and we get to do some cool things. So I think there are, well, actually, I'm just going to do reports of boards and commissions. I don't have much else to add. And I will start. Now I'm on the MINET board, so we've had a couple of meetings, but we've been cutting short our board and commission reports. So I will report on our April 26th meeting. We do get a monthly report from each of the department areas. So we hear about monthly services, we hear about the expansion project, mostly Rick Rial, and now moving into South Dallas and Falls City area, and really talking about sort of their community and marketing efforts and social media efforts. And I just want to say those reports are good. They're detailed. They talk about staffing. They give us data. So really worth looking up the minutes for those meetings. And they feel strongly about the new services. One of the interesting things to me, being new to that board, is that we took MINET itself, got the equipment and the staffing to be able to do these installations and digs and things themselves, right? We used to maybe have somebody else come in and do that, and now they do it. We do it all completely in-house. So quality control is there. We are, when we're doing these new installations, that it is really MINET folks who are out in the community doing this work. So that's great. Talked a lot about the sponsorships and the activities they're doing, and they're being very active, both the Willamette Valley Fiber operation in Dallas and of course MINET here. And talk about their hiring. We have 2 new bilingual staff at MINET, 1 new bilingual staff at Willamette Valley Fiber in Dallas, which is great. And we are going to be getting multi-gig service out to customers this summer. So that is way ahead of what they had originally planned, but they're going to be offering that to folks. So crazy that we will be able to offer that. And they are also engaged in sort of a statewide effort to check the coverage maps for internet, right? And the federal broadband access money that's out there. So they are doing a lot of outreach to gather speed test data outside this legacy market so we can accurately help determine those maps and where funding can come. So Minnet could be on the ground floor of that. So pretty exciting. So got South Dallas going and then moving to the Kings Valley Highway to Falls City Highway, moving along. And the fairgrounds got coverage at the fairgrounds finally. So if you've ever been a vendor or anything else out at the fairgrounds and lamented the poor internet service, thanks to ARPA money and Polk County's grant, we've got Minnet service at Polk County Fairgrounds. So the next meeting of Minnet is actually the Budget Committee meeting. So glad we finished this one so Marty and I can sit through the Minnet budget meetings coming up. As Janet said, they are looking at making those bond payments that things still have looked strong for that, but there are some other headwinds we'll be learning about and we'll be reporting those to you. Catch up on Minnet. Other boards and commission reports. Yes, Councillor Salinas Oliveros and
Thank you.
Councillor McKeel.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two. Arts and Culture Commission is meeting on May 31st this month instead of, I believe, this week. And I was not able to make the April meeting, but there was a small group of Arts and Culture Commission members who did go to the WU Art Student Show to look at purchasing art for the City Hall. So that was fun. And then I attended the PATH prevention team meeting on last Wednesday, and we had updates from different organizations, from Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. There was an overview of different projects in Polk County, a debrief about the Monmouth meeting at the church. And then we talked also about strategic plan update. We got the date has been moved to October for a strategic plan, but we expressed the need to have it sooner. We really need to have the strategic plan sooner and just have that guidance. And so there was many of us who have recommended that and hoping to work on that sooner than later. We do need that information. And then the PATH website is being updated, and City of Independence is helping with the logo of PATH. And so we'll be looking at some of those options soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McKeel.
I have the library report. The Friends of the Library did really well with their book sale. They improved their sales by $1 from last time. So the trajectory is still up. So that's good. The next book sale that you want to put on your calendar is in December. They are continuing to spruce up the library to just make it a friendly and welcoming place. New furniture with raised seats and study carrels. They've moved the books around so that it's kind of more visually easy to find collections. The magazines are close to the door. They're really thinking about their patrons. And then with that, along with the welcoming space, I don't know if you've been into the library, but Carrie's been doing a wonderful job with the culture months, the AAPI month, Asian Americans Pacific Islander Heritage Month. They have a display and they showed a movie. They have a Hawaiian storyteller that I've heard is very good coming in for May 25th at 6 p.m. And very dynamic is the note that I had. So put that on your calendar. And then coming up right after that is Pride Month in June. And again, they'll have a book display and they are going to show the video Stonewall, and present the Pride flag for the month. So lots of cool stuff happening for Culture Months. June 15th to August 5th, summer reading. So join that, go to the beach, read a book. No, they didn't say that. That's my vision of vacation. But in June, they're going to be doing, and I think I don't know, it's my computer's just doing it. Vinyl Revival Evening. They're going to play the old platters. So
Yeah.
yeah, 70s and 80s music. Just watch for a date in June is what I've heard.
That sounds
Yeah. And they said,
I'll bring my
actually,
record collection.
yeah, and young people are just, they expect to have a lot of young people there. So they'll also have on June 21st, Make Music Day. I'll let them know at the library that you will be there with bells on.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Or no, not with your vinyl. Never mind. Not
Oh,
with
yeah.
bells.
Yes, with my vinyl.
Hands on harp. So really fun activities coming up in the library. The next meeting is June 7th, and I'm completely lost here on the computer.
Yeah.
I'm just shutting that down. And I'm staying up there for forever.
All right,
As I try to come back to life.
Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that fantastic report on the library. I'm excited. I have two reports, and I'll start with the Parks and Rec Board. So the Parks and Rec Board last met on the 10th at 6 p.m. And the board's working on some really cool stuff before they take their little or our little break over the summer here. So they did discuss the skate park. If you haven't driven by, enjoy going by that curve a little more slowly if you're following the trolley, and look over safely at the skate park. There's some really, really exciting progress. Even to the extent of, we were there, it was, after 6 and we were in the Parks and Rec Board meeting, and they were still out there working on it. They're working on it hard. They're making great progress, and it looks different every day. So really excited to see that come online. Anticipated completion sometime the end of June. So John, you can get your skateboard and come out with me, and there will of course be a grand opening at some point to come. So just a lot of enthusiasm and excitement for that project.
And if you skin your knee, you can take the trolley home.
Yes, you can take the trolley home.
Hey, let me tell you, that is trolley use will be hot when that thing opens.
Right.
It's already a bunch.
So they also talked about their goal setting. They've been working to really have thoughtful conversations about the Parks and Rec Board's goals, and trying to set goals that are both meaningful but also achievable, looking at their scope of influence and making sure that those goals align. So really excited to be listening in on those conversations, and some really great discussion there. They also funded their recreation grants. So selected 4 recipients of the grants. One is a bike rodeo, dealing with youth safety and bicycle safety. Really cool, exciting thing. So if you do skin your knee, you can go to that rodeo and learn how to not do that again in the future. They funded a YMCA field day. They funded a portion of the Peacock Festival. I believe that was specifically to go toward the fun run. And they funded Ash Creek Arts Center, appearing at Music in the Park and providing arts for the families and children. I used to just say children, but I go over there too. So families and children that are engaging in those arts activities while Music in the Park is going on. So a lot of great work, a lot of great projects that came through, and really excited to see the community come up with these ideas that they wanted to see carried forward. The next meeting of the Parks and Rec Board is kind of a special one. So as I said, they generally take a break during the summer. That break is only kind of a break. It's a break because there's so much going on outside in our parks in the summertime. So they encourage you to join them in the parks with Music in the Park and all the other wonderful activities. So our last meeting before we do the little summer break is June 14th. and the Parks and Rec Board will be doing a tour of all the large parks in town. They alternate years. One year they'll do a small park tour. The other year they'll do a large park tour. I've been told to bring my hiking boots. So very, very much looking forward to that next meeting. Pivoting from Parks and Rec Board, and I'll be a little bit more brief here. I have a report on behalf of the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance. And the Homeless Alliance has been fervently working, trying to coordinate a lot of the initiatives that have been starting to funnel our way from the governor's executive orders. But tonight, I want to talk to you about the Affordable Housing Conference. Councillor Carey and I and Planning Commissioner Tangeman all attended the Affordable Housing Conference that was all day today at the Salem Convention Center, and just really fantastic information and ideas about ways to build, retain, incentivize, partner to craft affordable housing solutions for communities. I won't go too much in depth there. But I would like to deliver just a quick quote from OHCS Director Andrea Bell. She is fantastic. Anytime you can hear her speak, please, go. I've had the pleasure of hearing her speak a handful of times recently in the past couple months, and she's impressive every single time. But the quote that initially prompted me to pull out my book and write it down was, "Over the next few years, it will take the best of us to stand up and work together to address homelessness and housing stability in our communities." And my delivery doesn't do it justice. But thinking about that, it really is going to take all of the best of us to come together and find answers that that fit our communities and meet the way that the need looks in our communities. So as I look around the room, I think that we're all pushing together, and I'm really honored to be a part of that pushing here in your company. So I'll leave you with that. The next meeting for the Homeless Alliance is June 8th at 3 p.m. That concludes my reports. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Carey, and then Councillor Belt.
Real quick on planning, there is a meeting tomorrow of the Planning Commission, and Montessori School apparently is requesting an extension of the design review that they had. They were planning some fairly significant remodels, and that's going to have to be pushed out a little bit apparently, so they're seeking approval for that. So just so you know, if you're wondering what's happening there, it's still there, but it's just going to be pushed off a little bit.
Okay, great, thanks. Councillor Belt.
So I was not able to attend the last senior center board meeting, but I will definitely update everybody next month. I did, however, a couple weeks ago, go to the SEDCOR Board of Directors meeting, and it was at the new Holman Hotel in downtown Salem. Beautiful, beautiful hotel. They let us tour a bunch of the rooms, and a lot of the meeting rooms connect with some of the sleeping rooms. And so you can get a sleeping room and have a meeting room and have a big party and, have those wonderful events that they have, the after meetings. So it was wonderful. Some of the things that they talked about that I found very interesting, Fly Salem, they are bringing back air service to the Salem airport again. Something that a lot of people thought happened last time was that service was stopped because there wasn't enough ridership, but that's not true. Service was stopped because of the cost of fuel. And so there is, he used a particular term, but it's basically a low budget airline that's willing to come in. They want to start flying to Los Angeles, to Seattle, to San Francisco, and to Phoenix. And so over the next year, those destinations will start flying out of Salem a couple times a day. So that was very exciting. Salem Health Hospital and Clinic expansion. They talked a little bit about the expansion of the number of beds they'll have available in West Salem, in Dallas. Chemeketa Community College, again, came and talked about their baccalaureate degree program that they have. And there was a gentleman speaking about exploring professional baseball in downtown Salem. He is talking about doing fundraising to actually have turf on the field so that younger players have turf to play on as opposed to grass, which I didn't know was a big deal. But when it's rainy, a lot of the time, you can't play on grass because you can't play baseball on grass. So bringing professional baseball to Salem would bring professional style fields to Salem as well. And then of course they welcomed the Holman, and I encourage everyone to go downtown, have lunch at the Holman Hotel. It was fabulous. Thank you.
Ooh. Thanks. While we're on boards and commissions, we do have 2 applications to consider for openings. You were sent an application for our super volunteer, Randy Lowry, who apparently has some free nights in his schedule and has actually applied to join the tree advisory board. So we can inch more towards some quorum there, that would be great. And the other was sent out a while ago. Donna Conrad, who lives close here, a few blocks away, she actually is a historical fiction author and owns a historic home in Monmouth. And she has determined she'd like to get more involved in the community and has applied for membership on the Historic Commission. So we have those 2 applications before us. And I would entertain a motion to appoint both of those folks.
I'd move appointing both.
I'll second.
Okay, so moved and seconded to appoint Donna Conrad to the Historic Commission and Randy Lowry to the Tree Advisory Board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I see none opposed, so we'll get them to their next meetings. And also know that Phyllis and I have met to sort of talk about the people whose terms are coming up on other boards and commissions. And we will have them complete not necessarily this application, but sort of a version of this that we've talked about before as a group, really gauging what projects they think have been accomplished during their term and what they still would like to see done, because they have more knowledge of those particular boards and commissions. So we'll be getting information from folks who are interested in re-upping on our boards and commissions. And again, those whose terms expire on planning and budget, those 2 groups, I'll invite anyone on council who'd like to help vet applications for those 2 boards and commissions to help me go through a ranking process, determine who we'd like to do further interviews with, and go through a little more extensive process with those 2 as we determined a couple of years ago. So that's what I got. And council comments and now city manager, we'll let you go first.
Thank you. I only have a couple of notes, but I wanted to thank the council for your efforts on recruiting folks to join our boards and commissions, because I know that we have some vacancies we're trying to fill, and we appreciate you talking to your neighbors and inviting your friends and good people to serve. So thank you for that. Councilor Lopez, when you were giving your report about the park board and their tour, I was reminded today by our public works director, Russ Cooper, that there's a beautiful camas bloom in Madrona Park. And so if you get a chance to take a walk, it's a good time to do that. We're really great right now. I have 2 things to celebrate about our trolley service. Just we're still getting data back from Translook, who's got the app. We're also working out some bugs with the app. So I just want you to know if you've experienced challenges using the app to find your way on the trolley, that we're still getting data from it. But we learned that we had 9,000 boardings in the month of April. Wow. So if it seems like people are riding the trolley, we've got some data to back up that we have, despite some of the service glitches, and that we've got we have 1 vehicle that is in warranty service. So we only have 2 of our fleet that are running at any one time, but there have been some full buses, and it's been great news, and I'm hearing positive reports. 9,000.
You want to talk about the announcements we
Yes.
heard today?
Yes, I think if we're talking about the same thing, back in November, the City of Independence led, and we together on our work group applied for a State Transportation Improvement Fund discretionary grant for the 23-25 cycle for $500,000 to support the trolley service. And we learned from ODOT that we were awarded that transit a grant. The purpose of the grant was to ensure that we could run the pilot for the full 2 years, and hopefully beyond while we find sustainable funding. But that we got great news that we were awarded that grant. So celebrate.
Wow,
It's really
nice
good.
job.
Yes.
Good news. We're happy. Like her clapping in the council meeting. And then let's see. Our City Hall communicators are still meeting every month. This month, we're going to be having an on-site walk and talk at the City Hall site. So hopefully you're seeing there's lots of material and lots of progress, and the roof and the exterior are going onto the building. This coming Thursday at 3:00, the key communicators are invited to come and walk the site. And if you have that hour open on your calendar and would like to take a walk around the City Hall site, our builder and our owner's rep and I'll be taking a walk around the site. So you're also invited.
What time is that?
3 p.m. Thursday. We're trying to balance that with when there's work happening on the site.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, I think if you saw my Friday notes, next couple weeks, I'm going to be announcing some transitions on our leadership team. And one of them, I'm happy to announce that we have a Power and Light director who's going to be joining us on June 5th, Wade Carey. He's currently, and I think he's been tuning into our council meetings, so I'm grateful for that too. He's been working at Central Lincoln PUD as the Energy Services Manager, but we're really looking forward to having him join our team here in Monmouth. So I'm hopeful that as he gets started and we're having our budget adoption hearings with the council, Wade will be here and you'll be able to meet him.
And he worked at Bonneville, so he knows the backside, right? The upstream
Love it.
side. We're excited about that as well.
As a network.
Right.
That's all I have tonight.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Council.
you. All right. Now council comments and announcements. You want to start, Roxanne? Remind us where we're supposed to be on Saturday. So Carol can remind us where we're supposed to go after that.
Yeah, we've talked about it so much, and all night I've been working on separating socks and all kinds of things. And so we have 60 vendors for the inaugural Monmouth Peacock Festival, Saturday, May the 20th, 9 to 4, Main Street Park. We have 100 runners signed up for the fun run. We have 60 vendors. I have 5, 6, 7, 8, and I think I have 10 people in the Peacock Calling Contest now signed up. So it's gonna be a hootenanny. I have to tell everybody how much I appreciate everybody's help, everybody's flexibility. And I know Councilor McKeel, you've got an event coming right in on the heels, and I think it's actually going to work out really, really well. I've got my vendors that actually want to stay over, and hopefully some of the folks from the from your group will want to come and visit us. So it's all good. Please show up. We'll have a huge information booth. I'll have peacock puzzles. I'll have place picture opportunities, all kinds of stuff to do. Please stop by. Can you tell I'm excited?
Well, after a full day of peacocking, you need to, that didn't come out right. So after a full day of having fun at the Peacock Festival, the Asian American Pacific Islander Cultural Heritage Month celebration will begin on May 20th at 5:30 in Main Street Park Amphitheater. We're working with the Hawaiian Student Club, who's very excited. They're going to put on our first vendor market, which they said has lots of people that show up. We don't have as many. I think you hit the vendor record there, Councilor Belts, with your Peacock Festival. But what I heard from the Hawaiian students today is that lots of people come. We'll have like 5 or 6 vendors, but it doesn't matter because tons of people come in to have fun. We have a lei making activity for kids, so that'll be fun. We also will be having free tasting of the AAPI locally owned businesses. So Yang's, Momiji's, Sing Fei. I'm trying to run down the.
Lonnie?
There's a new Thai place, and I'm sorry to say I don't remember. What is the name?
Kim say?
So they will be there, and Mink's Pad Thai. Yeah, so we have a good mix. It'll only be a little bite because there'll be vendors there where you can also buy dinner. So yeah, so have fun at the Peacock Festival and stay for dinner. Yes, sorry, I'm making sure I covered everything there. And then on June 3rd is the Pride celebration. It's our third annual. It keeps getting better and better. We have our honorable mayor and Senator Deb Patterson that will give the welcome. And then we will have people who are coming for the Pride celebration go out and visit about 26 businesses who have agreed to put up the Pride flag. And then the people will go out, they do a QR code to check in. And then from that, they are eligible to have a drawing when they get back. We'll have a band this year. We have, again, hats off to the Peacock Festival and 60 vendors. I'm just floored. But we have about 15 vendors this year, which is twice the number as last year, and a free picnic. So come for lunch. It'll be about 12 o'clock. The band starts about 12, about that same time. We have City Councilor Chris Lopez and City Councilor Salinas Oliveros have agreed. They were the first volunteers. So they're going to be cooking the hot dogs. So come for a free lunch. And then when the band finishes playing, we had a poster contest for middle school kids and adults. So we'll present the awards to the poster contest and then our annual parade. That's Main Street Park Amphitheater.
All right. Sounds exciting. Great times ahead. And
and I forgot, put on the calendar Juneteenth. Sorry, June 19th.
Yes.
Main Street Park Amphitheater. We will have a Juneteenth
first
thing. Yes, event. Yes.
For the time, you know yet? Is it in the
It is in the evening, 7 o'clock, 7 to 8. And so far we have speakers, Maya Hopwood from the Western Oregon University, president of the Black Student Union, and Pastor Frank Morris.
Phew. With all of that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I hear that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And thank you all very much.